Okay, so really quickly, I want to jump back into our to the PDF. It's just a good time for us to click in there really fast and look at something because the next page that we're looking at is a complete breakdown of the naming convention that we have decided to work with. So you're trying to get to page, if you want to look at it with me, you're looking to get to page 16. So here in page 16, we've gone through, so again, there was a lot of debate, discussion about this, and I'll tell you how I feel about some of this. This was, again, sort of a consensus thing that we sort of came to. So the page that we're looking at right now is a breakdown of everything, sort of like going in order about what gets named what. So it starts out with the very top, naming your hard drive. And we just felt like a student can call it anything they want. They all name it after their pet dog or their, I don't know, their, you get the weirdest names. I don't know about you guys.
For very practical reasons, they should put their name on it because they forget them.
I would think that that would be a really good call, their name and a cell number maybe, so that if somebody finds their hard drive, they can, that's a brilliant idea. So you could actually suggest that at this stage of the game, but nonetheless. Then for the folder hierarchy that we actually set up, this is what we had actually, again, suggested and what we have done. And again, so I like the idea possibly that you would append import onto the end of that part, because again, I think it brings clarity to it all.
Because they've been so confused about
the catalog, this is again something we've already built and named. Again, it's their initials in catalog as far as that part goes. Then in the assignment folders, and this part has changed considerably from the way the old one was. The way the old one was, it actually started out, I don't know if you guys, it started out with a class number. It was like F1 for Foundations 1. And the problem with that is that everything then is tagged the same as far as the beginning of the file.
that was my point.
Oh, it's a nightmare. And when you're trying to grade, because it sounds like you grade in Canvas, right?
Grade in Canvas, right? But well, in Canvas, the file name actually in Canvas, the file name doesn't matter because they have to they uploaded it,
right?
So it's already under their
yeah, and it gets tagged that way.
Download it,
right?
Grade it, so then it gets really. So you're right. Then they end up, if they do it properly, they end up in the correct order, and then grading is so much easier.
That's exactly what we're looking for.
Go to date because it's arranged by when they've turned it in. So.
Oh, well, say, but for me, when we're grading, again, because I do everything in Canvas now,
they're in alphabetical order.
They're in alphabetical order, so I want my assignments that have been submitted to me to also be in alphabetical order. And in the old system, the old naming system, that did not happen. Yeah,
Okay.
so we've changed it. It does happen now. So the way the new naming system works out, and you'll see this is the breakdown right here. It's the last name underscore, and then we put in here 2-digit class. So again, for photo practice 1, it would be P1. For photo practice 2, P2. Again, just a quick code so that it gives you some idea of what the class is for. Then there is an underscore. We decided to keep in the assignment number. Again, it's just a flag to tell people what it is that you are really handing in. So this can deal with, for instance, I don't know if this happens to you guys, but if somebody turns in a late assignment, it goes into the full, so it's, let's say it's a week late. So instead of turning it in week number 2, they turn it in week number 3. But it's really the assignment for week number 2. I put it in a folder that says week number 3, but I know what assignment it is. So there's no confusion about, well, I turned it in that way, so why isn't it different?
On Canvas, I just have people turn it in
right.
to the correct place.
Right.
So it's already, it doesn't matter. I mean, I only give them, I need to be stricter. How long do I give them
yes.
to even get it? I'm just too whatever.
A lot of people are.
I'm just too nice.
But see, we've got this set up so that people who are only doing this via server it'll still work for them. So there are people who do not have them submit any of this in Canvas. They only work off the class server. They work off the Dropbox, and that's it.
Subfolders in your server.
You can, but wait, you can.
Drop it into the box.
It goes into Dropbox. You have to do the move into the subfolder. They cannot navigate to that. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? Speaking as a dyslexic person.
I'm right there with you.
Okay, are you?
Yeah, I am.
You know what? Honestly, so many people here are dyslexic. and I've been reading a lot of books about dyslexic
Uh-huh.
advantages, etc. You know about that. It's a whole just a different way of thinking, which works great for designers, artists, architects, whatever. But there's too many letters and numbers and crap. And like if I just say, tell me exactly what you were doing with assignment 3, week 2.
Right.
I don't know. But so what I do is because I feel like the simpler the better.
Right.
So I like the last name underscore the P1. That's fine. And then I do underscore light objects, just the quickest name of the nickname of the assignment.
Okay.
And everybody is crystal clear.
Right.
Exactly what it is. For me, workflow wise, I also changed from grading each week to doing work in progress in small groups.
Right.
And then on Canvas, creating a discussion
Mm-hmm.
where people have to upload a few photos and, you know, people can look at them and comment
Right.
on them. So that's like the week 1, and then the week 2 is.
Well, and that's another compromise that we came into this because Jay's feeling was
Jay was really into the week 1, week 2. Week
exactly,
3.
and so we actually agreed to put that in. So that's how you end up with this naming convention here. So at least it will be alphabetical. You'll know what class it's for. You'll know what the assignment is, and you'll know what week it ended up happening for. Seems a little much to me, but again,
Okay,
this was we agreed.
I get it. So this is what I call Gestalt thinkers
Right.
versus spreadsheet thinkers.
Right.
And I know Jay is not really a spreadsheet thinker, but okay.
Okay. So at any rate, the next thing down, and this again got into a whole lot of debate. For me, I felt like it made sense to, if you're going to go to the trouble of naming your assignment folder one way, that the files that go in it should share that same name. So that's what I do, or that's what I argued for. So if you look down here, the only thing that gets added to the name of the file itself is the counter, the frame counter. So it's exactly the same name as the camera assignment folder. It's just there's an underscore, and then this 3-digit camera counter Lightroom does that automatically.
But I thought we were importing save as DNG.
No, we are not.
Oh, really?
Things have changed.
Ooh, tell me about that.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
It's right where we're heading next. So anyway, that's what's going on here. Then for the exports, again, this was the guys, they agreed with my sort of logic here, is that, again, the naming should be identical as everything else has been in for this assignment. It simply should get tagged with export at the end of it so that you know what it is. So this is just a reference to go back to. As a matter of fact, if you ultimately do the very beginning sheets, the quick start guides that are in the very beginning, the import export, they have all of this in it. All of this exists in it. Okay, so I can show that to you really quickly because then I'm going to jump back into Lightroom. So again, when we set here in the very beginning, it's all of this part right here. You'll actually see in the naming convention here, again, last name, 2-digit class code, assignment number, whatever. So all of that is reflected throughout this. It's in the short version as well, the quick start version, as well as it is the more expanded PDF. Okay, so back into Lightroom, we're actually going to now import this file. So again, what we had talked about doing here was creating that alias. So we've actually gone through building the alias, and that's how students always will actually do their startup Lightroom. They do not start up from the application, but they will actually use the alias to do the startup because that guarantees that they are starting up with their catalog. Their catalog is what will be loaded. So you get away from a lot, oh yeah, I imported all my work, but I don't see it in my catalog anywhere. And that's because, well, you imported it into somebody else's catalog.
Right. No, well, but everybody has to sign into the computer, so I don't think that.
It shouldn't.
It's more like it will automatically go to pictures on the computer.
Right.
And then they're like, but I imported it, but they don't have it yet.
Right, and I can't find it. And what's all this? So at any rate, that's sort of like what's going on here. So we are going to assume, and again, it talks about right here, it'll work them through the steps that you've actually got a memory card and a memory card reader, and the memory card reader is loaded, and you throw in a memory card. So I have built, again, the thing that I call compact flash imitation. It's just a folder that's got some raw files in it, and I need to find my version of that guy. So yeah, so this is all it's got. Is it's a folder that's got. I should get rid of this. So yours looks the same. It's got 26 raw files in it. That's all it is. It just gives us something to work with. It's you copied it off of that hard drive onto your desktop. So to work with it, typically, if you have the preferences set correctly and you've unchecked the part about photos hijacking your compact flash card, when they insert a compact flash card, the import dialog box will open automatically. In our case, because we're doing it off of a hard drive or off of a folder, whatever, an imitation one, whatever, we actually have to click the import button. There's two ways to get to the import. One is this button right down here, and I think that that's how Chris does it in the quick guide. The other is if you come up to the file menu and you come down to import photos and videos. Either way, it does exactly the same thing, and it will actually get you to the same spot. So I've just clicked on that import button. Well, that's interesting. Did you guys get this warning? We'll see if I can actually. Huh. We'll see. So when I clicked on here, I'll see if it happens again. Let me cancel out of this. So I'm going to click on import. It says the destination folder external drive camera files is not available, using pictures instead. We'll see what happens when I get all the way around and actually pick it, because I want to do this in order. So we'll see how this goes. Hopefully you guys didn't get that problem. If you did, we're going to have to build another catalog and put it somewhere else, or we're never going to be able to do this import. Okay, so you need to, over here, so again, the way the whole process in Lightroom works, and I know you guys know this, you start on the lower left-hand side, you work your way up to the top, then you come across the top of the window over to the right-hand side, and then you work your way down to the bottom of the right-hand side. And if you've done all of that in order and everything is set up correctly, then we'll be good to go, and this will actually work. So on the left-hand side, starting here, you need to find the source. So for you guys, it's going to be on the desktop looking in that folder that says Compact Flash. For me, it's actually in my Pictures folder, and it's right here called Compact Flash Imitation. And if you click on that, it should populate your screen with a series of thumbnails. Did that work for you guys? Yeah. Okay, so the series of thumbnail part is exactly what we want. You can be selective about this. By default, all of these come on. You can say, though, that you want to cherry pick certain things, that you don't want to import certain things. So, for instance, if you click on the checkbox for any one of these two files, now that I've checked on those guys, neither one of these will be imported. All the other ones will. There's other ways that you can actually go through this. You can click on uncheck all and then simply click on one if you only wanted to import it. But in our case, we're going to go ahead and leave check all on this because we're going to want to import all of these files. Once that part is done, up here at the top, and this may be, guys, I'm going to have to see if I can't reset this. Hang on one second. Okay, so that part is actually fine up there. Oh, and I've got to uncheck my, because I've actually already imported this once before, these files. So I've got to undo that part. Okay, so in terms of what we're talking about doing now, we've actually got options up here. We can copy as a DNG, we can copy, we can move, or we can add. You get to actually pick any of these. So it sounds like in the old days you were copying as DNG. Okay, there's an issue with this that we need to sort of talk about right now, and it's this. So DNG was it was a raw file format that was developed by Adobe that was open source. It was open. Everybody could read the specs for it. Everybody knew what was happening to it. There was no secret parts of it. So again, when we were talking before about everybody's file is exactly, they're all Adobe raw, all raw files are really Adobe TIFF files that simply have this special header in it that makes it either an NEF file or a CR2 file or a, what's Sony's? I can't remember it either.
Save it as a DNG.
Yeah,
Anyway.
so at any rate, what the DNG promised and they said that they would do is the DNG says that no matter what information is in that raw file, we will bring that in to the DNG and it will be there. The problem that you have with that though is that that's a little bit of a false promise. What it does is it brings in all the information. It brings in all the raw data. It brings in all the metadata, all that part. It actually even brings in this secret header part. The problem is it doesn't know what to do with the secret header. It can read it, it copies it, but it has no idea what to do with it. So the DNG is not a true copy of your raw file. This becomes really a major issue in medium format. In phase files, there's a whole amount of code that exists in the secret header of a phase file that if you don't know, if the software that's processing it doesn't know about it, it is a train wreck. Your files come in, they look a stop underexposed. They've got a huge red bias to them that you can't get rid of. I mean, there's just it's a nightmare. So even though, in theory, the DNG is copying all of that secret header information, but it has no idea how to process it. It has no idea what to do with it.
I did not know that.
So that's problem number one. To circumvent that problem, you could actually set it up so that all the DNGs that were converted contained a copy of your raw data as well. So that if you were shooting a Canon, it would convert it to Adobe's DNG, but it would also embed a copy of the raw file in that DNG that you can extract. So that if there is this problem, you can pull the original raw out of it. The problem is that that doubles your file size. So the promise of this universal DNG part, whatever, is somewhat misleading. And so far, nobody, because again, what they worry about is that they're worried that Canon is going to go bankrupt and no longer support CR2. And then you're going to have to do this DNG conversion if you want because you're getting your files to work with software. However, that's very much of a doomsday sort of prophecy, I think, whatever. So we are suggesting, at least for the time being, all you really want to do is copy your genuine raw file, and we are going to work with that and not generate a DNG. Make sense?
I did not know. That is, wow.
Yeah, if you're a medium format shooter like me, whatever, the whole DNG thing DNG is very friendly to Nikon, and it's very friendly to Nikon and Canon. It's a nightmare with phase, a nightmare.
Wow.
So at any rate, so we're going to leave copy. In the PDF that's actually kicked out, we actually go through what the other options in this are. We explain what copy as DNG is. We also talk about move. We also talk about add in here. Again, these would only involve situations where raw files were already on a computer and that you simply wanted to move them around, or it was already in this folder and you simply wanted to add the reference to the database. But in all the cases that I can imagine that you guys are going to be working with, it's always going to be copy. It's simply going to be bringing it in. So that's what we're going to actually do. So we're going to leave copy on here for this. So then the next thing that we actually need to get to is where it gets copied. And if there were ever a place that causes a heartache and nightmare in this whole workflow, it's where we're heading right now. It's this. They don't pay any attention to this. They get this far and they just hit copy, and who knows where they are sending any of those files.
On Lightroom's part.
I would agree.
It is so unintuitive. It just looks like, oh, there's a picture. I'm going to go down to the real information.
Right.
And Lightroom thinks this is so important, we're going to have pictures. But really, it's like your eye just skips over it. I think that this is like 80, 90% Lightroom's fault.
I would agree. The steps that we're going to go through to actually build the assignment folder, because we're building the assignment folder in Lightroom now as opposed to pre-building them all, which you guys can do.
Okay, because I feel like
which could be easier. Nonetheless, when you get to this stage of the game, this is what Lightroom should force you to do, is to go in and actively select those things and not simply leave this up in whatever was previously had been set up or selected for this.
Yeah.
They should force you to go to actually name where you want it to be.
But also, I wonder why they don't have a preference. If you know that you're always putting pictures on your hard drive,
Right.
you're never putting images in pictures, that should be a preference.
Right.
That, you know, the default is the right thing as opposed to the default being the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That's, to me, a no-brainer design-wise.
Anyway.
Okay.
So we have got two options that exist here in terms of where this is actually going right now. And the two options, this existed in the workflow. They have to do with whether you're starting a new assignment import from the get-go or whether you're doing a continuing one. So again, if you were to slap in your SD card and it was the very first of your shootings, you would want to actually have this import part start at the beginning. Or if you were say like, oh yeah, my other SD card I left at home, but I'll just import that tonight when I get home, then you're adding to a session. So there's two different options that we're going to talk about both of them right now. So to navigate to this, to get to the right place, you want to come over here to the two, click on the drop-down menu and come down to Other Destination. A dialog box will actually open up. You need to click on your external thumb drive, then click on your Lightroom library. Then click on your camera files, and inside this camera file, if you've already built all of your assignment folders, they'll be sitting in here. You would simply click on it. In our case, you can build them from within, which is what we're going to do for this guy right now. So we're going to click on New Folder, and a folder will open up. And again, we need to give it the naming convention that we are using. So I'm going to do it, for instance, as if this was for the first assignment. So again, it starts with your last name. In my case, that's Engelhardt, underscore P1. So we'll do this for photo practice 1, underscore assignment, ASSIGN. Sorry. 01, because it's going to be for the first assignment, and then underscore W1 for week 1. So that's what we're going to actually name this folder. Now for me, I'm actually going to give this a capital A. This is another thing you guys should just know about, but this is a little bit on the side. There are actually Unix servers that will reject capitals as well. They're not as often, you don't find them as often as you used to, but nonetheless, some people would do this in all lowercase. In our case, we're going to be okay with this. But I'm going to copy this thing right now. I'm just going to drag across and come up to the edit menu and do copy. I want to copy that name because I'm going to use this name over and over and over again. And it just makes it easier. You talk about being dyslexic. I'm a horrible touch typist. I juxtapose all of this shit. So I can screw this up really easy. So the minute I get it right, I copy it, and then I use that copy to do all of my other naming. So just throwing that out, that's just the way I end up working in this. Say what?
I mean, obviously the last name in the P1 is always there, but
everything else is going to be there too. We'll get to it. You'll see.
Okay.
You'll see. You'll see. And then I'm going to hit Create. That actually puts that folder inside my camera files, and then I'm going to click Choose. That says that's the place that I actually want to send this guy. So that's how we would actually do this in the beginning part of this. The option B in this would again be if you have already developed this folder, then what you would do here is, again, you would come over, you would click on this drop-down menu, go to Other Destination, and you would simply navigate to that folder and choose it. So it's just a question of whether you build all of your files. That's what Chris does, and I think in some ways that's sort of a smart thing to do.
He just has the whole everything that they can just drag onto
exactly.
their, all the embedded folders they can just drag and drop onto their hard drive. And
so does that make sense what she's talking about? Chris builds this whole structure. The Lightroom, the catalogs, he builds the entire thing, all of the folders, all these, he builds everything into a template, and he gives that to every single student, and they simply copy it over. So again, what he's trying to
There's
do,
so much confusing stuff on here. You can only take in so much information.
and that's what he argues a lot as well. And he just says,
I remember him saying that at that one meeting we had like a while back, and I thought, you know, I like that. I can see either way, but
it's the thing. The advantage to it is that then everything is pretty much done as far as that part goes. Then they just need to follow these steps. They're not creating. They're not doing all of that work. It just shows up.
yeah.
So at any rate,
They still have to pick the folder that when they get to that last step.
say what?
They still have to pick the
They do.
folder at the
They
bottom.
do.
It's easier to remember
They
if
do.
you choose something that's already there than to create something and you're not 100% sure where you put it and where it's
Yeah, anyway, I understand the merits of both.
Mhm.
Anyway, okay, so we're going to move on. So now we need to get to the file handling part of this. So up here in the top, we are going to leave the size of the previews as standard, but this one is critical. We are going to check this build smart previews. The reason that we want to select smart previews is in the old days, again, you use smart previews. Do you use smart previews as well? So you guys know what this is basically all about. I'm recording this though, so I need this to everybody else to understand this as well. The advantages of smart previews is that in the old days, if you strictly had a preview but you did not have your raw file, you could not do anything else with it. You could look at the preview, but you couldn't do any developing. You couldn't do any of that stuff. What smart previews allows you to do is actually do work on a preview, not the raw file, but on a preview, so you do not have to be connected to, you do not have to have access to your raw files when you're doing that work. However, when you then do reconnect your hard drive to Lightroom that's open, all the work that you did on your smart previews will be transferred automatically to your raw files. So it's a great way of actually being able to work without having to have the raw files. But the real advantage to an instructor is that you can actually get the smart previews. Any work that has been done on the file, you can see without having them give you the raw file, which is gigantic. So again, one of the things that we keep trying to get them not to do is to please do not export your raw files to me. Please do not do that. However, if they do export the smart previews, you get to see all the work that they've done. And the smart previews, in honesty, are not a whole lot bigger than the regular standard preview that was being generated to begin with. So it's incredible.
I just have the reason why I haven't in the past had them build smart previews when they import is that if they're importing a ton of images, does that really slow things down?
There are people who would argue, and also the people argue, that's the argument against the XMP writing bit as well.
Oh, okay.
However, my comment on this would be, it's not like you're importing 10,000 images in this. They're importing 100, 200, something like that.
It takes 2 minutes to set one.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're exactly right. What else you had?
I was going to say, too, the other thing about the smart previews is I'm showing someone's work and it's underexposed, it's flat. I could actually go in and show them how to change it.
Yes.
Right on screen.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it gives you all the advantages of the access to the raw file without the size and the cumbersome and the storage and the whole 9 yards without all of that stuff. So smart previews, I think, was the best thing that happened for me. Anyway, I would also click on this do not import suspected duplicates. Very smart thing. This is the second place that doing a backup comes in. So this is the flip side to it here. So here, if you click on this to make a second copy to, what it's now doing is it's actually making a copy of your raw files, which would be sort of a backup. But again, the problem that we've got is that it's backing up your raw files, but it's not backing up your database. So this is the flip side. So now if you look at your stuff out here on the Finder, again, it will make a backup of all the files that are in this folder, but what it doesn't back up is your catalog. So again, why on earth would we back up the catalog and not the raw files? Why would we back up the raw files and not the catalog? You want to back the whole thing up, all of it. So don't do any backing up inside of Lightroom. It's nothing is set up in here to actually give you a legitimate, real backup. Yeah, I would have, or at least given you an option to say, yeah, I want to include everything or something. Yeah, yes, you would have thought. Or that you could have, every time you quit, it says, do you want to back this up? And then you get to check off what you want to back up. I want my raw files, but not the database. Or I want everything. Or what, you know, but I would agree with you. But anyway, so we are not turning this part on. We are not doing that. This also might be new to you guys. We have abandoned collections in this workflow.
Oh, I was wondering about that because it seemed like you guys were getting so into files and file naming and all that.
We have abandoned collections. Now, the workflow has collections at the very end. So if the collections are something you still want to work with and use, all the information has been updated. It's all right there.
Was so into their collections, or do you find that people just got so confused between collections and folders?
Bingo.
Okay.
So again, we feel like this is keeping it simpler. It's just we've removed an entire layer of having to do stuff in here. So follow us with this, and then you guys can decide. But again, the information, if you just say, hey, look, I still really want collections, or I feel like that I should have those, whatever, the information how to do them is still in that PDF. It's just at the very end. So at any rate, we are not going to add collections on here. For the renaming part, and this actually becomes a sort of an important one right here, so we're going to go through this part really quickly. To do the renaming part, first off, you need to check on this to actually say that you do want to actually have these things renamed. Chris made an argument that he does not have his students rename his files. He says he doesn't care what the name is. Typically it picks up the name from the that the camera gives the image, so it's DSC 898 or whatever. He doesn't care about that. I don't necessarily feel like that's smart. I think that, again, going through these things helps make distinctions that are important later on. One of the problems that Chris has, then I don't know how he deals with this, but if somebody uses two different cameras, those two different cameras can generate the exact same name, and therefore when you do an import from one camera, if a file already exists, it can overwrite the file that already exists because they have the same name. And there's no way to avoid that.
Wow. Yeah.
So renaming.
I always rename them just simply.
So, but we're going to make this as simple as we can possibly do it. So to the renaming part, if you click on this drop-down menu and you come down to Edit, it will open up, and in the presets that exist in this drop-down presets, I want to make sure I'm grabbing the right name one. Yeah, in this preset one, what you want to do is actually you want to come down to Custom Name Sequence. Again, we're going to try to make this as simple as we possibly can. So Custom Name Sequence will... So you don't have to go through all of this stuff. It will actually build this thing for you. However, what it's doing here is it's giving you a frame sequence that's starting with the number 1. That's not what we want to do, because if you don't use the right number of characters for your frame count, it can screw your naming up. So for instance, if you do a naming 1 through 10, everything will be in perfect order. But when you go to 11, what ends up happening is that the naming sequence will then go 1, 11, 2 through 10. It does, because the 1s trump the 2. 2 1s come earlier than a 2. So if you force it to have a naming convention of 3 figures, this will never happen. So you will have 001, 002. So then when you get to 011, which is 11, it will fall in the right place. So to get that, you use this little drop-down menu right here. Just click on that drop-down menu and come down to a sequence of 3 characters. Now, you could use 4 characters if you wanted to. This 3 character has got a limit of 999 files. It can't handle the 1000th file. So you could obviously put in 4 characters if you feel that, but most people are not shooting that many. But so this just becomes an option for you. In this case, then we just need to hit done, because again, we're using a custom text in this sequence. So I'm going to hit done. Then in the custom text box, if you click on this and then go up to the edit menu and come down to paste, it puts in exactly the stuff we want. It's the name that we used to build the assignment folder. Remember I said I'm going to copy that?
Oh, sorry, I didn't. Okay.
Make sense?
Oh, now I get it. Okay.
So now there's no way to screw that up. You also should get them to check what the sample will be. And the thing about this sample that's really important is the sample, you'll see if the start number is not set to number 1, it will be reflected in this sample. So if you hover over the sample, it'll show you the untruncated version of it. So you can see here, it's got last name, again, the P1, the assignment 01, the week 01. The week 1, and then this is my frame count. It's going to start with frame number 1. This part makes sense for us because this is my initial import. However, if I slam in a second card and import it, if I've already got images in there that already have, let's say I've imported this 26, my next card, I want the start number to be 27, right? So you would change that here in this number. So let's just say, for instance, we've already imported, let's say we've already imported 50 images. You would then put in the number 51 here because that's where you would want the next thing to be. All of this is reflected in this sample right here. So if they check the sample, they should look. This is what you want to look for always right here, is that start number.
How do they know how many are already in the folder?
They have to go look at it.
Yeah, they would have to look at that or know how many they're
Sense it and start from the last one. You have to set the number.
Exactly. Exactly. That's all that this part makes, because otherwise it's going to start the naming over again, which you do not want. However, I think, and this is probably true, once we do this import, we'll actually take a look. We can do another fake import to see. I think as long as Lightroom is open and you don't change any of the destinations of where you're importing to, I think it remembers your count, and it will actually then start. It'll put in the correct start number for you. But in our case, I'm going to change this back to 1 because that is where we're starting here. And again, you'll notice in the preview that it's giving us that 3-digit frame count in this guy. So we're good to go with this part. So that's the renaming part. And I'm going to scroll down here. In terms of what we're doing, applying during import, we are not going to do any development settings in import. However, we are going to do a metadata because this metadata allows us to actually put in copyright information. And again, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the way Chris, one other thing about this really quick, you also want to leave this extension on here as is. So what that means is that if you're shooting Canon, it's a CR2. If you're shooting Nikon, it's an NEF. This just actually helps things immensely. So you would want to leave the extension as is. But in this setting on import here, Chris, again, he blows past all of this. He doesn't do any copyright information. I actually feel like you should do copyright information, in part because I think the issue of copyright in our lives is incredibly important, and I don't think you can start too early about talking about
He does
that.
simply to make it simpler?
Say what?
He does that just to make it simpler?
Yes. He just feels like this, again, is another layer, another step that is not critical to him. Well, the thing is, too, you can always add it later. There's no reason that you can't go in and add copyright later on if you want. And once you get it set, again, this is the preset that is going to be written to the catalog folder so that then the next time you start up Lightroom, you don't have to build this preset again. So we are going to build a new one. So again, I'm going to click on the drop-down menu for metadata, and I'm going to do, I think, new. Nope, I'm going to do edit presets on this. It's actually going to open up, and the first one that opens up is basically going to allow to give us copyright information. So if you don't have this opened up exactly the way mine does, mine opens up this way by default, but you should have this, what we're looking at right here. It's just you may have one of these other drop-down menus opened up. Are you guys, do you have this guy here?
Yeah, I have them all.
Okay, you can close up all ones because it's this IPTC copyright is the only one we really care about. So we're going to build a copyright for this guy. To do that, I always start with the copyright symbol. So if you hold down your Option key and hit the letter G, it gives you the copyright symbol. So then I'm going to actually do that, and then I'm going to type in the Option key and hit the letter G. Don't ask me, but it is. Option C, I don't know what that does. But at any rate, Option G is the copyright symbol. And then I'm going to type in my name. And then the year, 2019. So this would be the copyright. This is how I would actually name this part. In the copyright status, I don't know how much you guys know about this stuff anymore, whatever. You can put this in. If you don't, it's not necessarily saying that your image is not copyrighted. This is strictly a notice that it has been. This doesn't really have anything to do with whether your image is, this doesn't make it copyrighted. You actually have to register your image with Library of Congress to actually get it copyrighted. The same thing with rights. A lot of people in here will put all rights reserved. You can type in anything in there you want. However, all of that is implicit in the copyright now. You don't actually have to declare that. You used to, you don't anymore, but you could put in all rights reserved. Then the creator, I'm going to put in my name again. If you were doing this for somebody else, whatever, these two things can change. So for instance, if I'm working for somebody and it's a work for hire and I don't own the copyright, they would have the copyright, but I would be listed as the creator. So what I'm trying to say is the information up here can be different than the information down here. I strongly, 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 strongly suggest that you do not add any of this information in here. Addresses, all of that kind of stuff, because this is going to embed that information into the metadata of the file, and it will go with it everywhere. So if you then create a JPEG and put that up on your website, the creepy guy who's been stalking you can pull that file off of your website, go into the metadata, and get your address. This is really scary. So people blindly go in and do this stuff. No, no, no. However, I do want them to be able to get in touch with me if they like my photo and they want to buy it. So what I do put in is my email address. And I also put in my website. And that is all the information that I put in. However, I now want to save this as a preset, so I am going to do that. I'm going to come up to my custom menu and come down, and I'm going to save current settings as a new preset. It'll let me name that preset, and again, option G is my copyright symbol. And create. This will now exist in a copyright. You can hit, so you can actually say done on this guy now because we've done everything we wanted to do. In your drop-down menu now, you've got your preset that exists here. And this again, they won't have to build this again. The next one they build will be for 2020. Or if they're importing old work, they could actually copyright something from, it could be have been copyrighted earlier. But at any rate, so that gets us through this part. The next part down, we're almost home, guys. We're almost there. It's almost home free. So in this part down here, and this is again, this is another place. Oh, we leave keywords blank here. If you did want to put in keywords right here, this is where you could do it. Again, the way we set this up. So for instance, we can type in a keyword here, even though we're suggesting in the workflow that they don't do this. But if you want to get them to do keywording now, this is a great time to do it. So for instance, I could put in outside. And then a comma separates the keyword. And then I would put in lighting, because this was a lighting demo. And then I could put in CCC for Columbia. So these would all be keywords. They are applied blanket to this. So they are going to be, every single file that I import is going to get these keywords. So at any rate, that's basically what's going on in here. Again, if you didn't want to do any of that, you would simply eliminate those parts and kick out of that. In terms of the file naming part here. So in destination, and this is again, this is another place where students can screw this up horribly. You do not want this checked into, wait, I think I just said that. You do not want to check this import into subfolder. What happens with import into...
You get a bunch of little folders, it's so annoying.
Yeah, you get a bunch of little folders, and depending on how you set up organize, it will actually also do them possibly by date.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. So you want to uncheck this into subfolder, and then in this drop down menu you do for organization, you want to say, I want this all imported into one folder. Do not do originals, do not do by date. So this is the setup for this. Uncheck import into subfolder and use your drop down menu to get to into one folder. And then the most important part, well, not the most important part, but certainly an important part of all of this is as you scroll down to this, you should see a highlighted folder. This is the check. Did they set this up right? And you can see in the bottom of mine that it actually is the highlighted folder is the assignment folder that we had actually built in this. So in this case now, everything is good to go, and you simply click on the import button. And you'll see up here at the top that it'll do the copy and import part. So it'll show you the copies that it's the progress that it's making. A lot of times you'll get two bars up here. One is actually writing the raw data over. The second one will actually be building the previews. And hopefully we've got enough room on that little jump drive that we're going to be good to go here. All right, so I have got 1230, guys. I'm fairly certain.
It says no photos in quick collection, but it says copy and import the bars
At the top.
Yeah.
That's the only part that really is going to matter for us. We probably should have done a much smaller selection of, because we don't need to import all 26. Just to make this faster, but nonetheless.
Is there a sheet design so we get paid?
Oh, for today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is. I think they made arrangements about that, but I wouldn't be the person to ask.
So you
But they don't know who's here.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying. You need to,
Oh, well, I can tell them who's here.
Are you sure you're going to remember?
No. The thing is that you guys need to notify, I would say probably Laura
Okay.
or
I
Ross.
just want to hear from you to make sure I can.
No. The thing is that that's what happens. Just she'll get back to me and say, did these people really show up?
Smart previews are built.
That's so weird. Mine said it's done, but then nothing's showing up. Now it's done. It was going.
Right. So you're selected on quick collection, come up to all photos. And you're good.
Oh, I didn't know it was there. Okay.
Must have a faster computer. I'm done.
Hey,
All right. So
Hey.
now what are we?
we're almost there. Okay, so we've got a little bit left to get through, but this should go relatively fast, I'm hoping, although I feel like I'm selling you guys a bill of goods here, and I don't mean to be doing that.
I'm not. What's the next thing? Is it just exporting?
So the smart previews were built or already exist, so I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. I'm sorry, what?
I have to go soon, so it's.
Okay, so
You're going along
on the PDF part.
right. And is there anything huge that's super different?
Well, we're getting rid of collections.
Okay, but aside from that.
So the only, we'll show you pretty much the next part that you really care about, we can get through really fast. And then whatever's left is you can just actually get through. Okay, so now they've actually got this part brought in here. So then we can actually talk about ranking photographs in here. So again, we want to make sure that you're in the library view. What a lot of people will say is to select a single photograph here and then click down here to actually go to the loop view or the more zoomed in view. That's what these two guys back here are for. If you go between, this is the grid view which shows all your thumbnails. This is the other one which shows just a single image at a time. If you click on the grid view, you've got a little slider right here that controls the size of your thumbnails so you can see more of them if you want, or you can make them actually bigger. It just depends on what you want to do as far as that part goes. We are going to talk now about ranking these images. And so in the PDF that exists right here, they're saying that they want them to rank every single image. That's something for you guys really to decide. So for me, it seems pointless to me to have them rank an image that they hate with a 1. I might as well just leave it blank. But nonetheless, that's not the way this reads. And I talked to them about this. So
Why don't they just, that was one of my big things, aside from naming, is it seems like it would make the most sense to just do a quick go through. Either it sucks or it's a possibility.
right,
And then you just go to your possibilities.
exactly.
And then you pick the best ones, because that's otherwise you're wasting all this brain space. Oh, is it a 2 or a 3? I mean, who cares?
Right. And I would strongly urge you to get them to develop that idea of doing it, because it's exactly the way I work through it. I go through everything that's a 1, everything that I like, that I want to keep and look at again or revisit is a 1. Then I do a sort, so I'm only looking at the 1s, and I go through and everything it's like, wow, this is really great, 2.
Yeah.
And I go through and I just keep doing that process till the end. Hopefully I get down to one single image that's a 5, and there you go. But so at any rate, but to rate these things, again, there are keyboard shortcuts that you can do for this. So it's basically just the number keys. So for instance, I've got this first image is selected. You can tell it's selected because there's a highlight that's around it. You can actually, though, gang and rate more images than 1. So for instance, I've got this first one selected. I just assigned it a 1. If I hit a 2, it adds a second star to it. If I go all the way up to a 5, it'll put 5 stars on it. If you hit 0, it goes back to the unrating. And it's just something that a lot of students don't know or don't understand. To get rid of any rating at all is the 0 key. So it's not that the star ratings are 1 through 5. It's actually 0 through 5, just to make that point. So at any rate, we can go through and actually, oh, that's what I was saying here. If you've got this first image selected, if you hold down the Command key, you can select discontinuous images. So I'm holding down the Command key and I'm going to click image number 3, and I've skipped over image number 2. So that's the difference in using the Command key and the Shift key. If I had used the Shift key and selected image number 3, it selects everything that's in between. But nonetheless, with these 3 selected at the top, if I hit a 1, they all get hit with a 1-star rating. If I hit a 2, they are all now 2-star. If I hit a 0, they are all now 1-star images. I mean, 0-star images. So there's nothing that's actually been tagged on this part. So that's basically the process of going through and ranking your images. And that's what we actually want everybody to do as far as this part goes. We need to talk a little bit about the layout of this right here, just so that everybody knows. The layout on this, you'll see up here at the top, there's a little flag. We actually use flagging in this, and you'll see why in just a second. So you can use flagging up here. You can actually click on it to flag a photo. If you click on it again, it unflags it. There's keyboard shortcuts for that as well. In the star ratings that exist down here, if they can't remember the 1, 2, 3, they can actually click on the star ratings here to actually change them. The one thing they can't do here, though, is get rid of a star rating. So for instance, I can go back to the 1, but I can't get rid of the 1. That requires the 0 key to get rid of that. If your camera did not give the information about its orientation when it was shot, you can use these arrows on the bottom to actually rotate these images. So where this usually becomes a problem, for most people who shoot like a typical photograph, like I'm looking out in the room and shooting it, there's a level that sits inside of my camera that knows the orientation of my camera. That actually gets written into the metadata, so the orientation here is brought in. But if you shoot straight down on something like that, that orientation goes to hell. And there's no information that's brought in. It doesn't know what's brought in. It guesses. So if you need them to rotate your images, that's basically how you would actually do that part. So some people, when they actually want to do ratings here, they will prefer to do it in the loop view. So again, if you click on the loop view, you've got the big image right now. You've got your stars exist right down here. Your flag exists right here as well. If to go through the images one at a time, we use the right arrow key or the left arrow key. You do not want to use the up key or the down key. At least I don't think so. Because if you stay in the thumbnail view like this and you use the down key, it skips frame 2 and 3. That's a problem. Most kids think they're going through the up and down arrow keys, are going through this one at a time. They're not. It's the right and left arrow key is what you have to use, and that will step you through all of your images. Do not use up and down. I'm going to go back to the loop view here. And again, let's say I love this image. This is my number 5 image, and we're good to go on this. But I'm going to go through and rate a couple of other images. So guys, just go through and rate a couple of images. Just throw in some 3s, 4s, 5s, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm just adding a couple to this. I just hit an 8, and that actually assigned it a color. Don't do that. We're not using color labeling in here. So I've got a number of images that I've actually set up that way. I am going to go back to my grid view. And now I've got a number of images here that have got different ratings in here. We can now filter for those ratings. To actually filter for the ratings, you can actually come in this drop-down menu right here and say that you want to filter for rated images. And what that will do is it will get rid of everything that doesn't have a rating, and it will then show you the ones that do have ratings. You can change the number of stars that it actually is showing. You'll see that there's a star right down here. It says that this is either greater than or equal to 1 star because I just turned that filter on. If you go all the way up to a number 4 up here, this will only show you 4 stars and higher. So it's a way to control what you ultimately see here. You can change this operator. This is, again, probably more advanced than you want to get into with your students. But if you click on this operator, you'll get this drop-down menu, and you can change what's happening here. So, for instance, if you only wanted to see your 4-star images, you didn't want to see the 5-star guy, you could change this rating as equal to 4 stars, and then only will you get 4-star images. Again, I would probably suggest that that's maybe more advanced than you want to get in with your group. Okay, so this is the final part of this whole sort of like situation that we've got right now that we're talking about doing this. The last thing that I'm going to do in here is talk about flagging images, because this is the way we've actually managed to get away from using collections. So in this, they've got their, let's say we're going to do their 4- and 5-star photographs. So that's what I've actually got going here. I've got 4- and 5-star photographs. But let's say you're asking in your assignment, you only want 1 image. That's all that you actually want. You can flag that image. So if you come up here and you click on the white flag, it will actually be tagged as the flagged image now. And this is how you're saying, these are the images that I want for my assignment. Does that sort of make sense? If you click on the flag again, it goes away. If you hit the P key, it will actually add a flag to whatever's selected. If you hit the U key, it actually gets rid of that flag. You also can use a negative black flag, but again, we're not recommend doing that right now. That would indicate a reject, and that's not something we want to get into right now. So I am simply going to hit the P key or click on that. I'm going to say, this is my flagged image. Then once you do that, you can actually then, so this is how we basically would deal with building, instead of doing a collection, of them saying, this is what I want to submit for my assignment. Are we good on that? So then, and here's the trick, and it's the final thing that we'll really need to get to. If then when you go to do your export, you turn your filters off. What Chris does, because he's using smart previews, he wants to see the entire shooting. He wants to see all 26 of these frames. He wants to see the entire shoot, because that way you know. If you only have them show you their 5 stars or their flagged photographs, they show you 10 photographs that are your 5, these are my top 5 stars. And it turns out they only shot 10 photographs. Clearly they didn't do the assignment. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you're using smart previews, because they're so relatively small, he has them export the entire shooting, every file for the assignment as a smart preview. So he then can go in, because he's got smart previews, the taggings, the ratings, the star ratings, and the flaggings come in because they're smart previews.
So then he can then look at everything that they shot.
He opens it up and he sees, okay, they did 100 shots. Check that off the assignment. Then he clicks on the flag filter to look at the assignment that they're actually submitting. All right, well then we're heading out of here quicker than I thought.
Okay, that's very interesting.
What time's your class start? 1? Perfect. We can get through the last 10 minutes of this, guys. So that's how he does it. So he turns off all the filters to do his export. And then to actually do the export, come up to the File menu. Come down to Export as Catalog. Not any of these other guys. When export as catalog comes up, guess what we still have on our clipboard? The name, because I copied it. Underscore export. And then again, we navigate to the export folder. And then in terms of how we do the export, you can say, I'm going to uncheck export selected photos only. That's not what I want to do. I do not want to export the negative files. I do want to build or include the smart previews, and we also leave on the available previews, although you could probably uncheck that. And then simply click on Export Catalog. And you'll see the progress bar at the top. If I then come down to Lightroom, in my exports, I've got exactly what I want right here. I've got my previews, my smart previews, and the export folder. If I close up Lightroom, and then start from this export catalog, the two things that you want to check. Number one, if you had put on there export negative files, there would be a folder in here that had all of the raw files in it. You would not want that. So you have them checked. That's in the whole workflow right here. They check to see if there is a folder in here. If there's a folder in here, there's a mistake. You should only have these files in here. If you
just throw out that folder then, and the rest would still work.
Say what?
Let's say they did that. The folder came, they had a million.
Oh yeah. They can just throw it out.
And then everything else is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, but if I double click on this to launch Lightroom, I see everything that they shot. However, I can filter it by flags, and it shows me just the one photograph.
So why does it say this happens sometimes when it says original and smart preview, but the original isn't?
Oh, the original here? Well, because again, the original is still on my computer, and it knows where it is. But if I unplugged this jump drive and still had the catalog some other place, and it couldn't see the raw file, so it did. But this part, again. Does this make sense where we're going here? So you get to see all of it, guys. You can actually look and you'll see, okay, actually I only want to see the flagged photos. And it was these two photographs. So you see everything that they want. If there's any developing, if any of that stuff exists, you've got it all. And then here at the end, whatever, you can actually see that they did the whole assignment, that they shot something serious. Yeah. But then what is it you really are submitting for this assignment? And there's just no question about it.
I think that's
it's cleaner than collections.
I remember Chris talking about this in some previous meetings.
Right.
And I thought it was pretty interesting, so yeah.
And that gets us through all of it.
Thank you.
I think. Let me just make sure. Oh, the last thing I wanted to show you really quickly. So, because this is how I do it, and so I think this is how you do it as well. So this is the export folder right here. If they're submitting this to the server, to the Dropbox, they simply drag this entire folder, not this file, but this entire folder gets drugged to the Dropbox, and then you can look at it and there's no problem. But if you want them to submit these assignments via Canvas, Canvas cannot handle folders. It doesn't handle multiple files like this at all. So you have to compress this folder into a zip. To do that, you simply select it, then you go to the little gear, come down to compress.
That's what I always do.
It will generate this zip file for you right here. The zip file is a single file right here. That is what they submit in Canvas, and you're good to go.
And in Canvas, you can say only files that end in zip can be submitted.
Right.
So that's another thing.
So the last thing you should know, guys, is that there's a set of shortcut cheat sheet that's on the very end of the PDF. It's a very abbreviated set. If you really look at all the shortcuts for Lightroom, there's thousands of them. This is the ones that your students are probably going to use, and you should be good to go. Any questions about this, guys? Are we good?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for coming. I'm going to stop the video. So, oh, the last thing I'll say about the video, if you want to watch this again, go to YouTube, do a search for Verser, V-E-R-S-E-R. That will get you to my YouTube channel, and this will be listed in there. It will be labeled as Lightroom Workshop 2019. And other than that, we're good to go.
Okay.
All right, guys. Good luck. Have a good semester.
It was very informative. So.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't. So, and also, guys, think about it. If there's things that you